Hey everybody, it is June 19th. My name is Tracy Brown, and I am just wanting to share a few thoughts, ideas about Juneteenth with you today. You know, when I moved to Texas, I was an adult, but it was a few decades ago. And I remember when I heard about Juneteenth, and then I learned about the dates. I was like, why are we celebrating something that happened 2.5 years later? Like, why are we celebrating here in Texas, like being 2.5 years late to the Emancipation Party? And having never heard about it growing up and not knowing the history, I just kind of wrote it off or ignored it and didn't get it for a couple of years. And then as I, began to understand more and get more history, I began to really, really value the Juneteenth experience and what it stood for and what it really could stand for if we were to honor it properly. So I just want to share a few historical facts first that help to put the Emancipation Proclamation and the emancipation related to Juneteenth, kind of put it in context. So if you know your U.S. history, then you know that the Emancipation Proclamation was signed and became effective in January of 1863. But what most of us don't remember is the detail that the Emancipation Proclamation was issued saying that all people who were enslaved in the states that had seceded and were not part of the Union would be set free, because there was slavery in the northern states and it was still happening as well. So key date, Emancipation Proclamation, January of 1863. Now, 2 years later, in January of 1865, the 13th Amendment was passed, and that is an amendment to the Constitution. Now, that is actually what abolished slavery. Emancipation Proclamation said people who were currently enslaved should be set free. The 13th Amendment is actually what documents the end of slavery in the United States in the Constitution. However, there is a little catch that, again, most of us aren't aware of and don't think about. And that is that in January of 1865, the Civil War was still going on. So anything that was passed by the Union didn't necessarily apply to those states that did not consider themselves a part of the United States. So the Civil War did not end until April of 1865. April of 1865. So that Emancipation Proclamation, that 13th Amendment to the Constitution, all the states that were fighting in the Civil War, fighting against the Union, the Confederate States, were like, I don't care what you say, that doesn't apply to me, until the surrender in April 1865 that ended the Civil War. So when you realize that, and by the way, that surrender that ended the Civil War happened to be in Texas. The battle that ended up in surrendering the Civil War and ending the Civil War happened in Texas. Little known fact. And so when you think about, the Civil War didn't end until April of 1865, it makes it a little different to recognize why federal troops arrived in Galveston, Texas in June of 1865. And even then, there were troops, right? There were people who were sent by the federal government prepared for any fight or resistance that might occur. But emancipation was then announced in Texas and began to be enforced in June. So instead of my original impression of Texans were 2.5 years late to the party, it's like, May, June, 2 months later, 2 months after the end of the Civil War, troops arrived to say, hey, in case you haven't heard, this is the law, and the Emancipation Proclamation occurred and does apply here. Now, you will hear on the news even, I've heard it a lot, that Juneteenth represents the end of slavery. It really does not. It is an indicator, it is a progress point, it is a key contributor to the end of slavery, but the constitutional change that ended slavery was then ratified in December of 1865 because now there was one United States. And so December 1865 is actually the official end of slavery in the US. So a few little history facts that helped me really understand and have a deepened desire to honor Juneteenth. And if you have been saying Juneteenth is the end of slavery, then I invite you to change what you say about that. And that you really look at Juneteenth as an opportunity to recognize that all of us in the United States and worldwide can honor this day as a day where all people are recommitting to the equality of others, that it is unfair and it is not right to enslave anyone and to treat people as if they are property. So I invite you to several calls of action for Juneteenth. Number one, I invite you to do your own research and not just go by what you've heard on the news from one reporter or 10, but to look at the different elements, and don't just take my word for it because I said it in this video, but really look at the timeline with the dates and go look up what the Emancipation Proclamation said and where it applied. Go look up what was the end to the Civil War and why might Texans have ignored the 1863 Emancipation Proclamation, and do your own research so that you can confidently share the true facts, not just surface level facts. Number two, call to action. If you're going to post on social media today or this week related to Juneteenth, then post something of substance. Don't just grab a pretty graphic and post it up there and say, yeah, happy Juneteenth. Because on the one hand, there is a reason to celebrate Juneteenth, especially if you are Black in America and your ancestry includes people who were enslaved. It's also a time to be happy for people who have not been enslaved, that the U.S. took this action and that you are part of, or your ancestry might include people who stood for the abolition of slavery. But more important, not just the commercialized images, educate. with your post. Engage people in a conversation about Juneteenth with your post. Empower people to understand the true nature of the holiday. And then call to action number 3, I would encourage you to make a 12-month commitment, like a commitment to get engaged in some way, or a commitment to financially support an organization that is working on ending race-based hatred and violence, or that you commit to subscribe to 2 or 3 thought leaders around racism and encourage yourself to learn more. Or maybe you join a book club, but do something. Commit today or this week. Find something you can commit to that will require you to not just take this Juneteenth as another holiday to have fun, to be with family and friends, or just to have a day off, but that you actually honor what the reason is for this holiday. You can also, of course, join us at the What Is Mine to Do Facebook group, where every day we ask the question, what is mine to do? What is mine to do to interrupt or end race-based hatred or violence? But whether you join the What Is Mine to Do group or not, I want you to do something. Use Juneteenth as an opportunity to really take a stand. Take a stand. Be an example. That's it for this Juneteenth update. My name again is Tracy Brown. You can find more information about me at tracybrown.com, or you can visit the Facebook group, What Is Mine to Do, or you can go to stainedglassspirit.net if you are interested in inclusion and spirituality, in creating communities, spiritual communities and churches where oneness does not mean sameness. That's it for today.